All right, I thought I'd take just a few minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, and just reflect on what I snapshotted, what I picked away from the reflections that you guys had of the Desmos thing that we filled out in class. First question about rolling backpacks. You guys didn't have that strong feelings about them. Just let people do what they want. Sounds fine. They're annoying because to trip over if people don't keep them close enough to themselves and they're too big to keep next to you during class. Some reason I found that kids really do not like the rolling backpacks. That's the only reason I asked of it. It's not an issue that was ever a big thing to me, and as a teacher, it's one that I'm almost completely unaware of. But that's one that I've found students like to chime in on. What have you learned about yourself as a learner this year? I believe this is an important thing. It's important to note that, well, everybody wants to talk about how much learning has been lost this year, and I think there is a point there. But um, my I would say that we've all learned way more than we ever have over the last year, and that's because we've had an extremely abrupt and unanticipated environment change, and that's when you learn things. And it's just the only thing is we're not aware of what we're learning, and we can't control what we're learning. But I think that one thing you all could be focused on is learning about yourself as a learner for the rest of this year, and as you reflect on this year. I learn better with no people around. That's when I teach myself topics. It isn't as hard as I thought. I lose motivation really easily. I have a hard time learning in spaces that are full of distractions. I can understand all those things. Certainly losing motivation really easily. I think that's something that everybody is feeling. And it's because we don't have the intermediate, like the short rewards, which for a student might just be feeling good about turning in a homework or feeling good that you know you did well on a quiz or feeling good that you put effort into a project. Or for me, it's more like seeing kids learning, seeing kids ask questions about the material, seeing kids smile when they're in my classroom, or maybe even laugh at a joke that I tell. Those things are what influences my motivation and your motivation. So it's hard. There's not much we can do about it, but it is hard and it's real. What can schools learn from this year? Schools should see how kids struggle more. I think this is just overall, but I think all the departments need to have better communication when they assign certain projects and assignments, because it's really stressful to have some weeks where we have a bunch of essays, 15-page notes, a lab, a bunch of other things due in one week. It's understandable during finals week because we expect it, but not during other weeks of the year. I think that's true. Um, the distance learning is better because it's safer and it keeps the students safe. I think that's true. That's an interesting point. I also think that I recently learned there's some kind of like a zero risk bias, which is what I think of with it. Like, I think some people want to get rid of all the risk that they possibly can. Not me, but I think a lot of people do. And to me, it leads to a little bit irrational decision making. I think safety is important, but I think there is always a trade off between um, safety and risk taking. And um, right now, we're certainly in a pandemic, so the safe thing for us to do is to stay at home. But I guess if I'm going to use an extreme example, like we could say everybody's going to stay home because we don't want some students to experience anxiety when they go into a group setting. But that anxiety is something that we don't want to avoid our whole lives. So um, there's a trade-off between safety and risk-taking, I think, that everybody should be aware of. Taking quizzes and text open note is more beneficial to a lot of students, and some teachers need to be more flexible and compassionate to students about the current situation we're in and not add extra stress and pressure. I do agree with that. I do think that when we come back, we may start to talk about, are we really, if we let kids use their notes and their resources, could we maybe test them on more difficult things, and would we maybe be testing a higher level skill set or higher level thinking skill? I don't know what the answer is, but it's a lot easier to go back to the way you used to be than to think critically about which is the best way. Take more time. Some kids aren't in the right mental state, so be more understanding instead of immediately upset. The schools should care about students' mental health more and not overwhelm students with homework. Teachers give out a lot of homework and it doesn't help us learn that much, especially during online learning. Homework is just added stress to an already difficult time. And I think it would be easy for a teacher to say, well, that's just kids being lazy. And I think that there's always that opportunity when you have a power dynamic. Teachers have power over students. Teachers can always dismiss complaints or criticism like this. But I think it's not fair. I think those things that you guys are saying are real. And part of the other thing I'd say is that our curriculum has gotten far off from what's important in the real world or what you guys know is out there. So the fact that we're giving you a lot of homework that consumes a lot of your time and it feels like it's nothing you're ever going to see again, I feel like that can be stressful. How can we improve this class? A piece of criticism for the class is being on the Zoom the whole time, maybe letting us go early, like 10 to 15 minutes, not much other than maybe we can go into the lessons with more detail. I'll take both of those into account. As far as mental health, we should have a mandatory class on mental health that helps explain mental health and provides student counseling and a place to open up about any issue. I believe schools should incorporate a curriculum that does not just act like a factory pumping us with knowledge for college. That rhymes, knowledge for college. In school, the only option you ever hear teachers talk about is college, but there are many other paths. I think schools should have all types of classes for the interest of the kid, whether they are interested in a trade or entrepreneurship or college. I think for a lot of kids, it would become less boring and less stressful because it is what they are interested in. Yeah, and I think that's true too. And I think one thing kids are really good at is reading whether adults are giving them the truth or if they're just giving them what they think they need to tell them. And there are a lot of paths other than college. College has become this kind of one size fits all, and it is expensive, and it may not be for everybody. And even if it is for everybody, it's important. I think it's important for everybody to consider what would your life be like if you didn't go there. Um, and we need to be more real about the messages we're implying sometimes. I think the schools should actually listen to students when they ask for things that can be beneficial for mental health, talking to students to see how they're actually doing. I think that's all true. I think the one thing that needs to be said in a town like Pleasanton is that there's just an enormous amount of pressure. This relates to the college thing exerted on you by adults and by your peers as well to know what college you're going to go to know what job you want to do. And it's all this like, it's like this fear of what happens if you don't know all those things that leads to your mental health. And you don't, in your sophomore and your junior year in high school, you don't need to know what you're going to do with your future. You should just be more focused on living in the moment or, learning what it is that you enjoy doing and following paths that go down those roads. Shout outs, Miss Shetty, she's pretty cool and helps out often, a friendly fellow. Ari and Jamie has always been there through my hardest times. I can always count on him. He's a great friend to me and also, well, me, but complimenting me makes me uncomfortable. So Miss Shetty, thanks for always being helpful to me in the class. I would also like to shout out Miss Shetty. Hopefully, I don't know what we do with all this, but I just wanted to show that I have read it. It is stuff that I think about, and I think we are in a position as a class to continue to give and receive feedback. As long as if we can stay engaged, we can do something different than most of the classes across the country are this year, and perhaps we could learn something that they might one day learn from us. So that's what keeps me excited and keeps me feeling like I have some power in this whole thing and this whole mess. And I think to me, feeling like I have the power, the ability to control some things in my environment is what helps improve my mental health. All right. Thanks, everybody.